everyone, welcome back to another video. If you're new here, I'm Vanessa and I make lots of bookish and writing related content. So if that's something you're into, stick around and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So with everything that's been going on in our country and the world lately with the coronavirus, I know a lot of people are going to be home a lot more. A lot of people may be working from home, and with theaters and restaurants and everything else to shut down right now, you probably find yourself with a bit more downtime than you're used to. And if you're a book lover like me, that just means a lot more time to read. So today I'm going to share with you a list of recommended books to read while you're stuck at home. I want to share a little something for everyone, no matter what your reading tastes are. So I'm going to go through this by genre and share at least 2 books or series for each genre that I think you might be interested in. For now, I'm going to skip the middle grade books because I do have a whole video of my top 5 middle grade books to read during this time. That will be up next week, so definitely come back and check that out if you're into middle grade books or you have kiddos around who you want them to read more during this time instead of binge watch Netflix or whatever. So for now, let's first dive into some YA fantasy, one of my favorite genres. So the first book that I'm going to be recommending to you guys is a duology, and that is the Onyx and Ivory duology by Mindy Arnett. If you want a shorter fantasy series, one that's not like 6+ books long, definitely check this one out. Like I said, it's only 2 books and they're both really great. I love them. I read the second one last year and it was a favorite of mine of 2019. So to start off with this book, I'm going to read you the Goodreads synopsis because I usually have a hard time summarizing this book, so this will be easier. And so the synopsis says, they call her Traitor Kate. It's a title Kate Breton inherited from her father after he tried to assassinate the High King years ago. Now Kate lives as an outcast, clinging to the fringes of society as a member of the Relay, the Imperial Courier Service. Only those most skilled in riding and bow hunting ride for the Relay, and only the fastest survive. For when dark falls, the night drakes, deadly flightless dragons, come out to hunt. Fortunately, Kate has a secret edge. She's a wilder, born with magic that allows her to influence the minds of animals. But it's this magic that she needs to keep hidden, as being a wilder is forbidden, punishable by death or exile. And it's this magic that leads her to a caravan massacred by night drakes in broad daylight. The only survivor, her childhood friend, her first love, the boy she swore to forget, the boy who broke her heart. The High King's second son, Corin Tremaine, never asked to lead. Even as he awaits for the Yore, the once-in-a-generation ritual to decide which of the king's children will succeed him, he knows it's always been his brother who will assume the throne. And that's fine by him. He'd rather spend his days away from the palace, away from the sight of his father, broken with sickness from the attempt on his life. But the peacekeeping tour Corin is on has given him too much time to reflect upon the night he saved his father's life, the night he condemned the would-be killer to death and lost the girl he loved. Which is why he takes it on himself to investigate rumors of unrest in one of the remote city-states, only for his caravan to be attacked and for him to be saved by Kate. With their paths once more entangled, Kate and Corin have to put their past behind them. The threat of drakes who attack in the daylight is only the beginning of a darker menace stirring in the kingdom, one whose origins have dire implications for Kate's father's attack upon the king and will thrust them into the middle of a brewing civil war in the kingdom of rhyme. I love the series, you guys. I love the characters. I loved Kate and her friends Bonner and Sigourney. I loved Corin and Dal as well. The characters felt real and fleshed out. They were imperfect, and I think that's what made them feel so real. I love the reveals we get here, the secrets we find out, and the politics in the series, as well as finding out about certain character schemes. I loved all of it. There is a romantic subplot in this story, but I like that it didn't overtake the main storyline, and I think it was done really well. Overall, I highly recommend. I do have a full review of this series that I'll leave linked in the description below. The next series I'm going to talk about is Poison Study by Maria V. Schneider. This is a trilogy, and it's about a girl named Yelena who is awaiting to be executed for murder. But before this happens, Yelena is given a choice. She can either go on with the execution or become the commander's new taste tester, testing his food to make sure no one has poisoned it. Which means she'll most likely still die, she just won't know when it's coming. Of course, Yelena chooses to become the commander's taste tester. Yelena also has some special powers that she can't always control, which puts her in even more danger. There is a romantic plot in here that I liked between Yelena and Valik, the commander's assassin / advisor. There's a romance between them that I thought was pretty cute. There is a lot more to the story, with like rebels plotting against the commander and more people being revealed as having magic, and some scheming that goes on here. So there is more to this, and overall it was a really fun series and definitely underhyped. This series also has a spin-off series with I think like 3 other books. So if you end up loving this trilogy and wanting more in this world, then the spin-off may be one to check out. I haven't read the spin-off series. I'm not sure if I will or not, because I like the way this one wrapped up and ended. But hopefully the spin-off series is just as good if you decide to read it. I've heard good things about it, so hopefully it is. So the next genre we'll get into is paranormal. And the first book on this list that I'm going to recommend is, of course, The Diviners by Libba Bray. If you haven't heard of The Diviners yet, you must be new to my channel, because I talk about them every chance I get. I love this series. I recommend it every chance I get. And I'm actually currently, as of filming this video, I am currently rereading the 3rd book, Before the Devil Breaks You, before I move on to the 4th and final book in the series, The King of Crows, which came out like I think 2 months ago. So rereading the 3rd one, and then I'm gonna get to the final one. So the first book is The Diviners, and this is a paranormal murder mystery. So we have one of our characters, Evie, who goes to live with her uncle in New York. And Evie has this special ability where she can pick up an object and see its history, who it belonged to, scenes from the past, that type of thing. And one day, Evie's uncle, Will, is brought in to consult on a case that appears to have occult ritualistic aspect, and he studies the occult and stuff like that. So they bring him in to consult on this murder case, and Evie ends up going with him. So she's trying to use her powers to help him figure out who the killer is and how to stop them before he strikes again. So that's the premise of the first book. The series kind of evolves from there and changes a bit, but that's the premise of the first book. I love the series. Like I said, can't recommend it enough. The book has several different characters, and we get a couple different characters' point of views in the books, which I like that. I found myself equally interested in each character's point of view, which is something that's not easy to do, especially when you have multiple characters that you're reading from. It's not just one or two, but I think there's like maybe 4 or 5 different characters, maybe even more. I don't remember exactly, but we have several different characters' point of views that we get to read from, and I was interested in all of it. Also, the characters in this series are very diverse. They're from all different backgrounds. So if you're looking for books that have diverse characters, this is definitely one to pick up. I will say these books are pretty long. It took me forever before I finally picked up the first book to read, because it is huge and was intimidating at first. But once you get into the story, it's so good and you don't want to put it down. And since the final book in the series just came out, this is the perfect time to binge read through the whole series. So the next paranormal read that I'm going to recommend is the Fallen series by Lauren Kate. This one is a more fun, lighthearted one. It's a paranormal romance, and it's about a girl named Luce who's fallen for this boy named Daniel who has this big secret. And Daniel tries to push Luce away and keep her at a distance, but Luce can't help but being drawn to him, even if it could cost her her life. So this one's got a lot of YA tropes we've come to see. It's got a love triangle. It's got kind of a forbidden romance, the mysterious brooding love interest. And while this series may not be the best out there, I'm still recommending it because it's a fun and entertaining read. So if you want a light, fun paranormal romance, then this is it. They've also made the first book into a movie, which I haven't seen the movie yet. I do have it on my watch list on Hulu, but I haven't watched it yet. So I don't know if the movie's any good or not. But if you finish the series and you're like, I want more of this, I guess the movie is an option to check out. So while we're on the topic of romance, let's talk about some romance books. If you've been on my channel before, you know I'm not big into romance books, but there have been some that I've read from time to time that I have actually enjoyed. So here are my recommendations for romance. The first one being The Wrath and the Dawn duology by Renee Audier. This book is inspired by the story 1001 Nights, and it's about a ruler named Khalid who every day marries a new bride and every morning comes to execute that bride without fail and without any reason why. So one day, a girl named Shazi agrees to marry the prince, knowing full well what awaits her at dawn. But Shazi has a plan. She doesn't intend on falling for the prince, which they never do, but come on, we know where this is heading. But she volunteers to try to get revenge for him killing her best friend, who was one of his brides in the past. So Shazi comes up with the plan to tell him a story that night. But like many great stories, she leaves him with a huge cliffhanger, begging for more. And she tells him she'll continue with the story tomorrow night. Well, he had already planned on executing her in the morning, but if he does that, he'll never get to hear the rest of the story. So what's the prince to do? Well, more than just the story, there's also something about Shazi that draws the prince to her. And the more time they spend together, and the more Shazi gets to know the prince, the more they both can't help falling for each other. I really enjoyed this duology. I loved Shazi's character. I wasn't quite sure about the romance at first. I was kind of iffy about the romance. But the more we get to know Khalid and the more we get to see this other side of him, the more I did like him. And I also felt sorry for him for, the situation he was in. And I did end up liking him and Shazi together. So if you like romance novels, this would be a good one to get into. The second one I'm going to recommend is also a duology, and that is Juliet Immortal and Romeo Redeemed by Stacey J. So this is a retelling of Romeo and Juliet, but with the twist where Romeo and Juliet are sworn enemies. Not their families, not that their families are sworn enemies, which they are, but Romeo and Juliet themselves are sworn enemies. And Romeo is out to destroy Juliet. So while I did enjoy the first book, there were a lot of fun moments. I thought the second book was like 10 times better, and I loved it so much, which was really surprising for me because the second one, Romeo Redeemed, focused solely on Romeo. We don't see Juliet in this one at all. And from the first book, I really did not like Romeo at all. I could not stand his character. And it took me a long time to pick up the second book because I didn't think I'd like it because I didn't like his character. But man, am I glad I was wrong. Because Romeo grows so much in the second book. He has so much character development. And I just ended up falling in love with him in the second book. I will say the series does have your typical YA tropes. Love triangle, insta-love. Although I will say the insta-love in the second book was actually much better than the first one. It didn't even feel like insta-love really, because it felt like the characters had known each other for much longer than they actually did. At least that's what it seemed like. Whereas the first one, you can definitely tell it's insta-love. But I still liked it. I still enjoyed it. It was cute. It was a fun time. And I really liked the characters. So this series might work for some. But if you really hate some of those YA tropes, this is probably not going to be a series for you. So now let's get into sci-fi. So the first book I'm going to recommend is Stolen Time by Daniel Rawlins. This is the first book in the Dark Stars series. And the second book just came out, I think, a little over a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. And I do have the audiobook checked out from the library. So I do plan on getting to it really soon. And I can't wait. Because Stolen Time was one of my favorite books of 2019. And this is a time travel story, and it's about a girl named Dorothy who lives in Seattle in the year 1913, and she's trying to escape from this arranged marriage. And Ash is from New Seattle in the year 2077, and he's a time traveler who's been traveling back in time to find his mentor, the professor, who's gone missing. So when Ash crash lands in Seattle in 1913, his paths cross with Dorothy's. Dorothy thinks Ash is just a pilot on a plane. She's never seen a plane before, so she just assumes this is a plane that he's on and he's the pilot. And so she looks at this as her opportunity to escape her arranged marriage. So she stows away on Ash's ship. Of course, things get a lot more complicated once Ash returns back to 2077 with the hidden Dorothy on his ship. I loved this book. It's fast-paced, it's action-packed, it keeps you turning the pages. It does go back and forth between Dorothy and Ash's point of views, and we do get a couple of chapters with the professor's diary notes. And I thought it was all interesting. It all kept me captivated and wanting to know more. And there's a twist at the end that just leaves you begging for more. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have to wait a year for the next book. I definitely recommend this one if you love time travel books. And I do have a full review of this book as well, so I'll leave a link down below if you want to hear more of my thoughts on it. The next book I'm recommending is called Archetype by M.D. Waters. This is a duology, which I still haven't read the second book yet, but I need to because I remember reading Archetype and I loved it. So for this one, I'm also going to read you the Goodreads synopsis as well, because it's easier than me trying to explain it. So the synopsis says, introducing a breathtaking, inventive, futuristic suspense novel about one woman who rebels against everything she is told to believe. Emma wakes in a hospital with no memory of what came before. Her husband Declan, a powerful, seductive man, provides her with new memories, but her dreams contradict his stories, showing her a past life she can't believe possible. Memories of war, of a camp where girls are trained to be wives, of love for another man. Something inside her tells her not to speak of this, but she doesn't know why. She only knows she is at war with herself. Suppressing those dreams during daylight hours, Emma lets Declan mold her into a happily married woman and begins to fall in love with them. But the day Noah stands before her, the line between her reality and dreams shatters. In a future where women are a rare commodity, Emma fights for freedom, but is held captive by the love of two men, one her husband, the other her worst enemy. If only she could remember which is which. So while this is also a mystery/suspense, as you can tell from the synopsis, I put it in the sci-fi category because there are some sci-fi elements to it, especially with what we find out throughout the story. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars when I read it. The ending was great. There were twists that I didn't see coming, and I liked where the story was headed. I can't say too much else other than that without getting into some spoilers, but definitely check this one out. I will also say this book has some mixed reviews, and it could be kind of strange and weird at times, which I guess for some people doesn't work, but for me it worked and I loved it, so that's why I'm recommending it. So the next category I'll go into is dystopian / post-apocalyptic. Now, some of you, like me, may be total weirdos who actually like reading dystopian and post-apocalyptic stories, even during a time like this. So for my fellow weirdos out there, here are some of my recommendations. The first one is the Arcana Chronicles by Kresley Cole. The first book in the series is called Poison Princess, and I describe this series as a supernatural Hunger Games. It's set in a post-apocalyptic world, and the characters, each of the kids in the story, has a special power or ability, and basically they have to fight to the end, and only one of them can survive. So like I said, basically a supernatural Hunger Games. This is one of my favorite series. It's fast-paced. Each book leaves you on this huge cliffhanger where you're like, I need to know what happens next. So I would definitely say be prepared to just binge through the whole series. I still haven't read the last book yet, I still need to. But the last one took forever to come out, so I'm gonna have to go back and reread the other books before I get to the last one, which I'm definitely okay with because, like I said, this is one of my favorite series. The next book I'm gonna recommend is The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. So in this dystopian world, there's a mysterious disease that's killed most of America's children, and those that are left develop these powers or abilities, some of which are very dangerous. Ruby, our main character, has an ability that makes her one of the more dangerous ones. So she ends up being taken to this government-controlled camp, and she's there for a few years before she finally escapes. Once she does, she ends up joining these group of kids who also have abilities, and they try to make their way to a place called East River, which is like a safe haven for kids like them. This one was a little slow at times, but I still really enjoyed it. I really like the characters in here, especially some of the ones we get to meet later on in the series. Although Ruby did kind of annoy me at times, but for the most part, I like the characters in here. The second one definitely leaves you on a cliffhanger where you have to find out what happens next. So again, be prepared to binge the series. So if you love dystopian books, you'll probably like this one. But given our current global situation, this may not be the best time for some people to read this. Now let's get into some mystery thrillers. So the first one I'm going to recommend is Final Girls by Riley Sager. So Final Girl is a term used for the lone survivor at the end of a horror movie-like massacre. Quincy, Lisa, and Sam are all final girls, each having survived a horrific event that left all their friends dead. For Quincy, it's been 10 years since that horrific night, and things are finally getting better. She has a caring boyfriend, a great apartment in the city, and a popular baking blog. Things couldn't look better until Quincy gets news of Lisa's death and Sam shows up on her doorstep unexpectedly. So why is Sam here? What really happened to Lisa? And will these two final girls be lucky enough to escape once again? Well, I'm not going to tell you everything. You got to read the book to find out. I love this book. It hooked me right from the beginning and kept me turning the pages. And that twist at the end, I did not see coming at all. Like, I kind of wish there was a way I can erase all my memories of this book so I can read it again as if it were the first time, because it was so good, so unexpected, and I loved it. And I really want them to make this into a movie, so I hope they do that. The next book on this list is Killing November by Adriana Mather. I actually didn't know anything going into this book except that it's a YA murder mystery, which I love, and it was written by Adriana Mather, who also wrote the How to Hang a Witch duology, which I read and I really enjoyed as well. So I kind of recommend going into this one not knowing much at all. It's a murder mystery and it's set at a boarding school. So if that piques your interest, definitely give this a try. Of the 3 books I've read by Adriana Mather so far, Killing November is definitely her best one yet. I loved it and I cannot wait for the sequel, which I'm happy about, but I'm also kind of bummed about because when I first read this book, I thought it was a standalone. I went into it thinking it was a standalone, and then I got to the end and the cliffhanger and I realized it was going to be a series, and I was like, no, are you kidding me? I have to wait for the next one? So, little disappointed about that. But I really, really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to get to the sequel. So now let's talk about horror, one of my favorite genres. So the first book in this category that I'm recommending is Sawkill Girls by Claire Legrand. This book reminded me of Stranger Things, which I loved, and I can definitely see this being adapted into a movie or a show, and I hope they do that because that would be awesome. This book is dark, but I wouldn't really say scary, at least not to me, but then we all have different levels of what scares us, so it's kind of a subjective thing. The story is told through the perspectives of three girls, Marin, Val, and Zoe. Marin suffered a recent loss in her family, so Marin, her mother, and her sister all moved to Sawkill Island for a fresh start. Unfortunately for Marin, this isn't the start she had in mind, as she quickly becomes involved in the mystery of this island and its disappearing girls. Val is the queen bee of the island. She's known and loved by just about everyone except Zoe, but Val has some deep dark secrets of her own. Zoe has been obsessed with finding out the truth about what happened to her friend Thora. She doesn't know how, but she's convinced that Val and her family have something to do with Thora's disappearance and with the disappearance of all the girls that have gone missing on Sawkill Island over the decades. The way Zoe, Val, and Marin's stories come together and intersect was really interesting, and I liked each of the girls, but probably my favorite was Val. I loved her character arc and seeing her change and some of the internal battles that she struggled with. The story does have some paranormal, supernatural aspects, but I think it fits better in with the horror genre, which is why I put it in this category. I had a lot of fun with this, and if you like horror, you probably will too. The second one on this list is a duology that I've recommended before, but it's so underhyped and deserves way more attention that I'm recommending it again. And that is the Mary duology by Hilary Monahan. The first book is Mary the Summoning, and the second is Mary Unleashed. These are a retelling of the Bloody Mary story. These books are so creepy, but so good. The characters in here sometimes makes you want to smack them, but they're dumb teens is what they are. Messing around with stuff they shouldn't be messing around with. And I get it. I mean, we've all been teens. We've all made dumb mistakes. But what frustrates me is they make the same dumbass mistakes over and over again. And at that point, I can't really sympathize. I'm just like, you had it coming. Anyway, if you like horror books and you love creepy ghost stories, this one's definitely for you. Okay, so 2 more categories left. This video is turning out to be way longer than I expected, but that's okay, we'll go with it. So the next category is historical fiction. So the first book I'm going to talk about is called Kindred by Octavia Butler. This one also has some sci-fi elements to it. It's a time travel story, but I put it more in the historical fiction category because we're not really focused on the science in the story. We're more concerned about what's going on in the time period. So in this story, our main character Dana lives in the year 1976 with her husband Kevin. One day she ends up traveling to the past to the year 1819 and saving a kid named Rufus from drowning. Dana doesn't know how she got to the past or how she keeps going back and forth between the past and present, but it soon becomes apparent that she's meant to save Rufus's life, which she has to do several times over the course of her going back. However, it's very dangerous for Dana traveling back to that time period because Dana is a black woman and Rufus and his family are white slaveholders, and one wrong move could end her life before it even begins. I will warn you, this book is not for everyone. It can be really intense. There are scenes of slaves being beaten and whipped, and while there aren't any rape scenes shown on the page, it is talked about that the slave women are raped. I think this book can spark so many interesting discussions if you read it as a group. If you do read it, I would suggest buddy reading it with someone, or in a book club or something, because I think it has potential for some great discussions, especially about the characters and Rufus's character in particular. I thought that he was such an interesting, complex character, and I like that the author tries to show us different sides of him. This is another book that I have a full review for, so I'll leave it linked down below. The next book is The Raven's Tale by Kat Winters. This was inspired by the young life of Edgar Allan Poe and his muse, who's personified in this story as a Maccabee woman named Lenore. I love the writing style in this book. It is so beautifully written, and I love how the author incorporates some of Poe's original poems into the story along with her own. I thought it was really well done. And if you want a story with beautiful poetic writing, this is it. I will say some parts in the middle were kind of slow, especially Edgar's chapters, but I still really enjoyed this. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to get into contemporary books in this video, because I did do my top 5 contemporary book recommendations a few weeks ago, and I will leave that link down below if you guys want to check it out. So for now, I'm skipping over contemporary and moving on to the last category on this list, which is nonfiction. So for those of you who would rather use this extra time to read something that'll help you learn and grow, whether personally, spiritually, or relationally, then this list is for you. So my first recommendation is The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth by John C. Maxwell. I love this book, and it's one that I keep going back to over and over again. It's all about how we grow and being intentional with our growth. This book was kind of an inspiration for my own book that I wrote, which mine focuses on personal growth in several different areas of your life. I'm hoping to have that book published sometime this year, but if you want to stay up to date on the latest news about my books, then definitely sign up for my newsletter. The link will be in the description below. Anyway, Maxwell's books are great, and I definitely recommend this one to anyone who ever asks me about a personal growth development book. This is the one I typically point them to. The next book that I'm going to recommend is The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. If you're looking for a way to grow in your relationships with others, whether that's family or friends or a significant other, then I definitely recommend this book. It goes through the different love languages and how they're expressed, and how to learn others' primary love language so you know how to express love to them. Again, I cannot recommend this one enough. Definitely a good one to check out. There are 10 more nonfiction books I could recommend, but the last one I'm going to put on this list is Anxious for Nothing by Max Lucado. Millions of people already struggle with constant anxiety, and with their current situation, anxiety levels may be rising sky high for a lot of people. Even those who don't typically struggle with anxiety may find their anxiety levels increasing due to the virus, lack of supplies, having to stay home and not go anywhere. That's why I think this book is so important now more than ever. In the book, Max looks at verses in the Bible about anxiety and how we can respond when we're feeling anxious. Now, this is a Christian book based on biblical principles, so I get that it's not going to be for everyone. But if you're really struggling with anxiety right now, I'd suggest to give it a try. You really have nothing to lose but time, and these days we seem to have more of that. And, best case scenario, you might pick up on something that might help you with your anxiety. Also, for those of you who do read the book and want to get more out of it, I'd also suggest a sermon series called Anxious for Nothing. It's a series my church did last year based on Lucado's book, and it gives you practical steps you can take to help with your anxiety. I'll leave a link to the sermon series down below in case anyone's interested. So that's it. Those are my book recommendations for when you're stuck at home and needing something to read. Let me know in the comments below what are some books you would recommend during this time. Or, actually, better question, let me know if you were stranded on a deserted island with only 3 books that you could read. Which 3 books would you take with you? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you guys next week with some middle grade recommendations. Bye!